Gentlemen, I hope lockdown is going well. It's a short video today just to cover off what should have been handed to me already and today's task. So what I should have received is a goals draft and an intro draft. Those can be placed on the same Google Doc, so then I can go through and update it. Again, as we go through each draft, you can update these and this will end up being your final document. The more work you do on these and the more detail that you go into, the less work down the line that you're going to need to do. And it's a lot easier to do it when it's in the present moment and when we have just covered each unit. And it'll just limit the amount of work that you have to contribute to do towards the end. I should also be getting Google Docs for each day of the lockdown tasks, and these can be on the same document. Tomorrow we will move on to motivation, and today will be our last part on nutrition and hydration. So yesterday you had to do the 4 hours of recovery and looking at hydration and the effects around this. Again, it will be helpful for your own sport that you participate in. Today's lesson, we are going to move down to nutrition part 2. Click on that. You order this seems familiar. We've covered in class before. Again, just go through, read over it. You've written some of this in your books previously, and we're just going to scroll down to, in particular, the last part. And this is about your evaluation for part of your assignment. So all of you have finished a logbook and should have done 4 weeks of this. Again, minimum of 3, going through 3 evaluations each week. Of those, part of that is you need to evaluate your nutrition and hydration out of 3. 1 being poor, 3 being excellent. And the same for your overall performance satisfaction down the bottom, how hard you worked, and that is out of 5. So with this, read through this information, and what you need to do is that you need to put this into a table similar to this. Simply just going through week 1, we've done 3 sessions, session 1, 2, and 3. My nutrition was poor, average, excellent, and that led to my performance in this one here being below par, very good, and excellent, 5 out of 5. What we're trying to see is the correlation and the link between these 2 elements. And again, you can do this when we get to motivation or sports psychology tomorrow. You can add in a different table because we want to produce a graph. So you can cut and paste something similar to this as long as it's your data. And we can put it through to an Excel sheet similar to this. What I've done is I've hidden the element of sessions. We don't need to include that because we know that we have 3 sessions in here. Then simply what I have to do, highlight it. We've done our first 4 weeks. You can obviously, when you do your final evaluation, and we've done 7 weeks, you'll add in another 3 columns down the bottom. I'll go through to up the top, insert, and that'll recommended charts. Click on that, and I'll go through, and my recommended one is this one here I can use. Click on this, I'll add a title, and I can see in here, knowing that this one here is nutrition, and that was rated out of 3, and then performance was rated out of 5. What we can see here, and what in particular we're looking for, is the correlation between how well our nutrition was and perceived, and how our performance was. So in week 1, session 1, this will be session 2, session 3 for that week, I can see that my nutrition was poor, and that led to my nutrition, or sorry, overall performance being poor. And we can see that throughout here. First session, again, pretty average. It's not too bad for nutrition, but the overall performance was poor. And again, the first session for week 4. This could be correlated because possibly you might have 3 training sessions that day, so your nutrition is poor, your glycogen levels are low, you haven't eaten a big meal 3 hours beforehand. Leads to me not being able to work at the intensity, as I have to use fat as possibly an energy source, and we know that we've described that we can't use that at high intensity as we work through. Again, you might have evaluated this as we went through the nutrition unit and have looked at ways to manage that. It could have been that you packed more food, you ate post-workout, that this helped your recovery by refueling the glycogen levels. You looked at the right proportion of ratio between carbs and protein. You researched what food you could consume post that, so you can see that you had an exercise output changed and your rating higher towards the end as you managed those and had more understanding around the research of that. As I mentioned before, this graph really just illustrates how well you have been going throughout, and shows that correlation to each one, and it describes points in which you can pull out and discuss why maybe on this day, every third session that you perform a lot better. That could have been because you eat a meal 3 hours beforehand. It's your only training session for the day. You've had a rest beforehand the day before. You are eating a banana 1 hour beforehand or a muesli bar, and it's leading to high glycogen levels in each training session on those days. To the PowerPoint, which you're working off, the PDF, which I showed you earlier. What I've put in here is an exemplar performance result. So instead of having both the data points on one graph, I've separated them to 2 graphs. You can see here this is obviously performance out of 5. Again, that third session being a lot higher, and you'd link that into down here, third session. Okay, yeah, nutrition is really high, it's 3 out of 3. Third session, not too bad here. Third session again, really high, and this one here, really high. And it might not just be linked to hydration and nutrition. It actually might be linked to your motivation on that day, that you had a rest day beforehand, that you're training in a group on those particular days as well. So it's a combination of different factors, but having these graphs throughout this actually provides a point for you to evaluate it and actually crunch the data that you have in your logbooks and use that wisely and in a way that's quite easy to digest. There's some exemplar evaluations. Again, these are quite descriptive and don't really go into why eating high carbohydrate meal beforehand actually can benefit performance, and why afterwards, eating 30 minutes afterwards, a high carbohydrate meal with some protein can benefit you as you go through. But it does link in each session and uses the data above. So you can have a look at this. Conversely, you can also have a look at how you might construct an evaluation of it. So one clear observation from my graphs is that I always perform better when I ate well prior to my training sessions. So I find that when I planned what I ate and when I ate it, and then you'd lead into the reasons for that. You can do this same evaluation for hydration, for the numbers that you have for that. And you can link in, you've done the research in yesterday's session of the reasons if you don't hydrate well, how it can affect performance. And you can go into the details of that and how that also links in with motivation. You can talk about your prior experience with that and how it affects you on a day-to-day when you know you're hydrated, and how it affects you mentally and physically from past experiences. You can also do this with motivation and any of other points that you have information for. It could be heart rate as we go through each point. This all leads to is you creating now a draft for nutrition and hydration. We've spent a number of periods on this now, and this draft will be due next week, likely midway through next week. But it'd be great to start it now, while again the information is fresh in your mind to start with that. We're looking for each draft to be at least 3/4 of a page. Again, you can use the graphs in that, but we're looking for the word amount or volume to be around half to 3/4 of that page, especially if you're using graphs in there. And I expect everybody to be using graphs because you're going to need to for other things as well. It's the clearest way to digest the information. These discussion points above that I've gone over, plus I will put some information on our blog around the talking points, and obviously use the information that you've already sent to me in your lockdown document. You can use that in this evaluation as you go through it. Again, the reason for a draft is I can give you feedback and get you referred back to you, and you can make the changes ready for your final document.